My mother forced me to be left-handed like her since age 5. When I secretly used my right hand, she broke my fingers. I was 8 years old when Mom caught me drawing with my right hand in my bedroom and slammed the door so hard the whole house shook. She grabbed my wrist and twisted it until I dropped the crayon, her fingernails digging into my skin as she dragged me to the kitchen table. She pulled out the wooden cutting board and told me to place my right hand flat against it, palm down. When I hesitated, she pushed my hand down herself and picked up the meat tenderizer from the drawer. The first blow landed across my knuckles with a wet crack that made me scream louder than I ever had before. She hit my fingers 3 more times while I begged her to stop, each impact sending white-hot pain shooting up my arm. My pinky and ring finger bent at wrong angles and started swelling immediately. Mom drove me to the emergency room while I sobbed in the passenger seat, cradling my mangled hand against my chest. She coached me in the parking lot about what to say, her voice sweet and concerned like she hadn't just destroyed my fingers with kitchen equipment. "Tell them you fell off your bike and landed wrong," she instructed, fixing my hair and wiping my tears. "If you say anything else, I'll break the other hand too." The ER doctor examined my fingers and frowned at the x-rays, commenting that the fractures looked unusual for a bike accident. Mom jumped in immediately with details about how clumsy I was, how I always fell off my bike, how she'd been telling me to be more careful. The doctor seemed satisfied with her explanation and put my fingers in splints. For the next 6 weeks, I had to write with my left hand exclusively because my right was immobilized. Mom watched me constantly during those weeks, making sure I didn't try to use my injured fingers even for simple tasks like opening doors or picking up toys. She praised me when I struggled through left-handed writing assignments, telling me how proud she was that I was finally learning to do things the right way. The right way meant her way, the way she'd learned to write after her own mother had forced her to switch hands as a child. When the splints came off, my fingers were stiff and weak, and the doctor recommended physical therapy to restore their function. Mom refused the physical therapy and told the doctor I would heal naturally with time. She didn't want anyone else examining my hands or asking questions about the injuries. At home, she made me practice writing with my left hand for hours every day, timing me on simple sentences and criticizing my letter formation. When I instinctively reached for something with my right hand, she would smack it away and remind me that right-handed people were weak and careless. She told me stories about how left-handed people were more creative and intelligent, how we were special and chosen. She said my father had been right-handed and that's why he'd left us when I was 3 years old. The lies came naturally to Mom because she'd been telling them her whole life. She created an entire mythology around our left-handedness, claiming we came from a long line of left-handed women who possessed unique gifts. She showed me faded photographs of her grandmother supposedly writing with her left hand, though I noticed the images looked flipped in some strange way. She bought me left-handed scissors and notebooks and made a big production of how special and rare our supplies were. Everything in our house was arranged for left-handed people, from the way she set the table to the position of light switches and door handles she had rewired. School became a nightmare because I couldn't keep up with my classmates when writing. My left-handed letters were shaky and illegible compared to the neat handwriting I'd developed with my right hand before Mom caught me. Teachers marked down my assignments for poor penmanship and suggested I get extra help, but Mom insisted I was just adjusting and would improve with practice. She volunteered to help with classroom activities so she could monitor me and make sure I didn't slip back into right-handed habits. During art class, she would position herself where she could see my hands and give me warning looks if I started to reach for supplies with my right hand. Mrs. Brennan, my 3rd grade teacher, pulled me aside one day and asked why my handwriting had gotten so much worse since the beginning of the school year. I wanted to tell her the truth, but Mom's threat about breaking my other hand echoed in my mind. Instead, I lied and said I was trying to write like my mom because she was left-handed too. Mrs. Brennan suggested I might be ambidextrous and could benefit from using both hands for different tasks. But when I mentioned this at home, Mom became furious. She screamed that there was no such thing as ambidextrous, that people who claimed to use both hands were just confused and weak-willed. The control extended beyond handwriting into every aspect of my daily life. Mom made me brush my teeth, eat, and throw balls with my left hand exclusively. She watched me during meals and corrected my grip on utensils, sometimes reaching across the table to reposition my fingers. When I played catch with neighborhood kids, she stood at the window to make sure I threw with my left arm, even though it felt awkward and unnatural. The other kids noticed how poorly I threw and stopped including me in games, which Mom said was proof that right-handed people were prejudiced against us. By 5th grade, I had developed a permanent cramp in my left hand from forcing it to do tasks it wasn't meant to perform. The muscles in my forearm ached constantly, and my handwriting remained messy and slow despite years of practice. I started having nightmares about Mom catching me using my right hand and breaking more bones, dreams where she chased me through the house with the meat tenderizer raised above her head. I began sleeping with my right hand tucked under my pillow to hide it even while unconscious. The hypervigilance was exhausting, constantly monitoring my movements to make sure I didn't accidentally use my dominant hand. Middle school brought new challenges as assignments required more writing and the pace increased. I couldn't take notes fast enough during lectures and fell behind in multiple subjects despite understanding the material. My left hand would cramp during long writing sessions, forcing me to stop and massage it while other students continued working. Teachers started noticing my struggles and suggested I might have a learning disability that required testing. Mom attended every meeting with school officials and insisted I was fine, just a perfectionist who put too much pressure on myself. The school counselor, Mr. Davidson, observed me during classes and noticed that I favored my right hand for everything except writing. He saw me reflexively start to reach for things with my right hand before quickly switching to my left with a panicked expression. During a private meeting, he asked direct questions about my handwriting difficulties and whether anyone at home discouraged me from using my right hand. I froze completely, terrified that Mom would somehow find out about the conversation. I denied everything and said my mom was very supportive of my left-handedness because we were both left-handed naturally. One afternoon in 7th grade, I was rushing to finish a timed math test when my left hand cramped so severely I couldn't hold the pencil. Without thinking, I switched the pencil to my right hand and finished the last 5 problems with neat, legible handwriting that was completely different from my usual scrawl. Mrs. Patterson noticed the dramatic change in my writing style and kept me after class to ask about it. She compared the right-handed answers to my left-handed work and said it looked like 2 different students had taken the test. I panicked and claimed I didn't know what she was talking about, that I'd written everything with my left hand like always. Mrs. Patterson called Mom that evening and explained her concerns about my inconsistent handwriting. She suggested that I might naturally be right-handed and was forcing myself to write with my left hand for unknown reasons. Mom's voice became ice-cold as she explained that our family had always been left-handed and accused Mrs. Patterson of trying to corrupt me with right-handed propaganda. She said some people were prejudiced against left-handed children and tried to force them to conform to right-handed standards. She hung up on Mrs. Patterson and spent the rest of the evening lecturing me about staying strong against people who wanted to change us. That night, Mom made me write with my left hand for 3 straight hours as punishment for allowing my right-handed tendencies to show at school. She stood behind me watching every letter and criticizing my form when it didn't meet her standards. My hand was shaking with exhaustion by the end, barely able to grip the pencil, but she insisted I complete the full punishment. She warned me that if any teacher ever saw me use my right hand again, she would break every finger on both hands and tell the hospital I'd been in a car accident. The breaking point came during 8th grade when I was selected for the academic decathlon team, which required extensive written responses under time pressure. During our first practice session, my left hand cramped so badly I couldn't continue writing. The team coach, Miss Liu, suggested I try writing with my right hand, just to see if it felt more comfortable. The moment I picked up the pen with my right hand, words flowed across the page with speed and clarity I hadn't experienced in years. My handwriting was neat and confident, my thoughts organized and complete. The other team members stared in amazement at the transformation. Ms. Liu asked me directly why I'd been forcing myself to write with my non-dominant hand, and for the first time in years, I told the truth. I explained about Mom's obsession with left-handedness, about the broken fingers when I was 8, about the constant surveillance and threats. I showed Ms. Liu the scars on my knuckles from the meat tenderizer and described the nightmares I still had about Mom catching me using my right hand. Ms. Liu listened with growing horror and immediately called the school counselor to report suspected abuse. Within an hour, I was sitting in Mr. Davidson's office telling the full story to a social worker named Angela Reeves. Mom arrived at school demanding to take me home, claiming the teachers were brainwashing me against my own family. She insisted that left-handedness was our heritage and identity, that I was betraying our ancestors by allowing right-handed people to corrupt me. When Angela Reeves asked Mom to explain the scars on my fingers, Mom claimed I'd been clumsy as a child and hurt myself in various accidents. She became increasingly agitated as the questions continued, eventually screaming that the school had no right to interfere with our family traditions. Her mask of concerned motherhood slipped completely as she revealed the depth of her obsession with controlling my handedness. The principal called Child Protective Services while Mom ranted about left-handed persecution and government conspiracies to suppress our natural gifts. When the CPS worker arrived and documented the scars on my knuckles, Mom's story about childhood accidents fell apart completely. The injuries were too precise and deliberate to be accidental, clearly inflicted by an adult using a blunt instrument. X-rays at the hospital showed old fractures that had healed improperly, consistent with my description of Mom breaking my fingers with the meat tenderizer. The radiologist confirmed that the injuries could not have resulted from a bicycle accident, as Mom had claimed years earlier. I was placed in emergency foster care that night with a family who had experience with abuse cases. For the first time in almost a decade, I could use my right hand freely without fear of punishment or surveillance. I spent hours that first night just writing my name with my dominant hand, marveling at how natural and effortless it felt. The foster parents, David and Carol, watched with tears in their eyes as I rediscovered my true-handedness. They provided left-handed supplies alongside right-handed ones, letting me choose which felt more comfortable for different tasks, instead of forcing conformity to arbitrary rules. The court case took 8 months to resolve as Mom's attorney tried to claim religious freedom and parental rights protected her methods of raising me. He argued that handedness preference was a cultural choice that fell within parental authority, not grounds for removing a child from their home. The prosecutor countered with medical evidence about the physical abuse and psychological trauma caused by forcing a child to suppress their dominant hand. Expert witnesses testified about the developmental damage of deliberately breaking a child's fingers and the long-term effects of chronic hypervigilance and fear. Mom testified in her own defense, revealing the full extent of her delusions about left-handed superiority. She claimed that right-handed people were taking over the world and oppressing left-handed individuals, that she was protecting me from a conspiracy to suppress our natural gifts. She insisted that breaking my fingers had been necessary to save me from becoming weak and conformist like my father. The judge listened with visible disgust as Mom described her systematic campaign to erase my natural handedness and replace it with her own obsessions. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding Mom guilty of child abuse and unlawful imprisonment. She received 3 years in prison plus mandatory psychological counseling to address her delusional beliefs about handedness. The judge specifically noted that cultural or religious beliefs could never justify physically harming a child or suppressing their natural development. He ordered Mom to have no contact with me until she completed extensive therapy and demonstrated genuine understanding of the harm she had caused. 6 months after Mom's sentencing, I was writing effortlessly with my right hand, and my grades had improved dramatically across all subjects. The chronic hand cramps disappeared completely, and I could take notes at normal speed during lectures. I joined the school newspaper as a reporter and discovered I loved creative writing when I wasn't fighting against my natural handedness. The foster family officially adopted me after a year, providing the stable home environment I needed to heal from years of psychological manipulation and physical abuse. Today I'm in college majoring in occupational therapy, specializing in helping children overcome developmental challenges caused by abuse or neglect. I use both hands naturally now, writing with my right and using my left for tasks where it feels more comfortable, the way most people do without thinking about it. Mom finished her prison sentence but remains convinced that she was protecting me from right-handed oppression, sending occasional letters about left-handed conspiracy theories that I don't read anymore.